students, today I have to take the topic of DPMS, that is ERD. ERD stands for Entity Relationship Diagram. So students, let's begin. So first I would like to tell you what is an ER diagram. So here we have two things, ER diagram. So E here stands for entity and R stands for relationship. Right? So this ER diagram, that is entity relationship diagram, these are used to represent the relationship among the various entities that are present in the database. Right? So if we have a number of entities present in the database, if you want to show their relationship, we have to use a ERD diagram. Right? So basically, these are the models. ER models are the models that represent the real world objects. You can see here, real world objects. So a real world object can be like a person or a car. All these are present in the real time, right? Or maybe a company. All these are real time entities, right? So another important point about a ER diagram is that these are the structural format of the database. So what is the structure of database we are using? It is represented by the help of ERD diagrams, right? So moving over to the next slide. I will rub this. Now these are the symbols that are used in an ER diagram. The first and the important symbol is rectangle. So rectangle represents the entities in the ER model. All these rectangles will represent an entity in the ER model. Then comes the second symbol, that is your ellipse. So ellipse is represented like this, and it represents the attributes in the ER model. These are the attributes in the ER model, right? Third symbol represents a diamond. So this diamond represents a relationship among two entities. Any two entities can be related to each other. This is shown by the help of a diamond. So this is a diamond is for relationship, right? Then comes signal line. This symbol is used to attach attributes to entities and entity sets with other relationship types. That means if we want to connect two entities or with a relationship, we will take the help of lines, right? Next important symbol is double ellipse. So it is represented by double ellipse like this, right? This represents the multi-valued attributes in the ERD model, right? Next comes double rectangle. That is represented like this. We are having double borders for the rectangle, right? This is used for weak entity. So we will see what is a weak entity in the next slides, coming slides. Now these are the basic components in the ER diagram, right? So first and foremost is entity, attribute and relationship, right? So entity we have discussed, this is a real-time object about which we can have some information in the form of attributes, right? So there are two types of entities, strong entity and weak entity, right? Similarly, attributes, these are the information or the headers about the entity. What information we have under different headers for the entity are known as attributes. There are four types: key attribute, composite attribute, multi-valued attribute and derived attributes, right? Then comes the relationship. Relationship can be of four types: one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one and many-to-many. So we will be discussing all these things in the later slides. So moving towards the next components in the AR diagram. First one is the entity. So entity may be an object with a physical existence. So entity can have a physical existence as well as it can have a conceptual existence. Okay? So in physical existence we can have a person, a car, a employee, a bank account, etc. Right? Anything that is present physically is a physical existence entity. Right? And anything which we have in a concept, like a company, a job, a university, we can call that as a conceptual existence, and that is also an entity. Right? Now next is, what is entity set? See, entity is an object of entity type, and when we prepare a set of all entities, it is called an entity set. That means entity set is a set of all entities of similar type. Right? For example, if we have an entity, E1 is an entity type student, then set of all students is the entity set. E1 is our entity, that is a student, right? So this is your entity, and if we say a set of students, that becomes an entity set, right? So moving further, so I'm rubbing this. See, this is the way to present an entity. A rectangle describes the entity type, right? And this is the way how to present the entity set. So if E1 is your student entity, that means entity set could be E1, E2, E3, that is a collection set of students entity, right? So moving further, I will tell you what are the different types of entities we have. Basically, we have two types of entity in the broad terms. First is the strong entity and second is the weak entity, right? So, dealing with strong entity, it's a type of entity that has a key attribute. Key attributes means it has a primary key, okay? And so it does not depend on another entity in the schema. So it is an independent entity and it's also have a primary key. All the entities that have a primary key are independent of other entities and they are known as strong entities, right? And they are represented by the rectangle, right? So next is the weak entity. These are the entity types that does not have any primary key and they are dependent on other entities. So these are known as weak entity types. We don't have key attributes for it, right? So now I will take an example of a weak entity and a strong entity. See, a company having a company database is there. It has two relations. First is the employee table, right? Another is the dependent table. We have, in employee, we have EID, e-name, and suppose salary, right? In the dependent table, we have parents, children, spouse, etc. Also, we have a EID here, right? Now, this is the dependent entity and this is the strong entity. So, since dependents are all related to employee entity, right? So, strong employee will be the strong entity, and since dependents table is dependent on employee, so it is a weak entity, right? So, one more thing. A weak entity is represented by a double rectangle, so we have to represent it like this, right? And this is the symbol for strong entity. This strong entity will be represented like this, that is employee here, and here this is dependent, so it will be represented by double rectangles, right? Our entity type is, the participation of weak entity types is always total. So participation of the weak entity types is always total, and this type of relationship is called identifying relationship. So your strong entity is having identifying relationship with the weak entity, and this relationship is represented by double diamond like this. So this is the relationship. Okay, I will show this in the next slide. See here, as I've told you, employee is the strong entity, right? Dependence is the weak entity, and this is the identifying relationship. So we are representing strong entity employee as single rectangle, weak entity dependence as double rectangle, and identifying relationship as double diamond. So next is the attributes. This is the second important part of the ER diagram. So attribute, what is the attribute? Attribute is the property that defines the entity type. Suppose we have a student entity, right? So what are the attributes we can have for a student? What are the properties a student can have? Suppose this is your entity, student, right? Entity is your student. So what will be the attributes for this entity? They can be student ID, student roll number, student name, student city. Okay, so all these will be the attributes because these are the properties about this entity student. And one more thing, we have to represent our attribute through a oval. This is the way to represent a entity, right? Sorry, attribute. Attribute is represented in the form of oval in the ER diagram. Now here there are different types of attributes we have in a ERD diagram. There are key attributes, composite attributes, multi-valued attributes, and derived attributes. We will see one by one each of them. The first one is the key attribute. Key attribute is also known as primary key. So this is the attribute that uniquely identifies each entity in the entity set, right? For example, roll number will be unique for each student. If we consider roll number as the attribute, this will be a key attribute because it is unique for each student. No two persons can have same roll number, and no roll number can be shared by two students. So next is the type of attributes is the composite attributes. So when an attribute consists of many attributes, this is called a composite attribute, right? For example, we have an address attribute for a student entity type. It can have the values like street, city, state, and country, right? So these are making the address as a composite attribute, right? So it can be represented by an oval comprising of number of ovals. Like this is the this is a composite attribute we have, right? Address, and it is composed of number of ovals: street, city, state, country. All these are connected to the main oval, that is the address oval, right? So this is your composite attribute. Next comes multi-valued attribute. So multi-valued attributes, what does that mean? It is the attribute that consists of more than one value for the same entity, right? For example, a person can have multiple phone numbers, right? So we can declare it's a multi-valued attribute, right? So similarly, you can have email also. If we write email, a person can have multiple emails, so we can consider this as a multi-valued attribute, right? And how it is represented in the ER diagram? It is represented with the help of double oval, right? So this way we can present a phone number or an email if we have for a student, right? Now next is the derived attributes. So as the name suggests, this derived attributes is derived from other attributes that are present in the entity type. For example, we can deduce age if we are given the DOB of a person, right? How we can calculate the DOB? How can we calculate the age? Age can be calculated by present date minus DOB, right? So this is a derived attribute, and we can represent a derived attribute as a dashed over. We write like this. This is the age. This is your derived attribute, right? So this is about derived attribute. So next I will show you the complete ERD diagram for this student. So you can see this is the complete diagram. Here we are representing all sides of entities and all sides of attributes. This is your student, this is your entity, this is your entity, you can see. Now this is underlined roll number, so this is your primary key or a key attribute, right? So, and here this is your composite attribute, because this is an oval that is connected with many ovals and having multiple bifurcations, right? Address could be divided into country, state, city and street. So this is a composite attribute, this is an entity, this is a key attribute, this one is the key attribute, right? And here, this is a multi-value attribute. This is represented by double ovals, so we can call it as a multi-valued attribute. And you can also see that one person can have more than one phone numbers, right? And next is, this is the age. This is your derived attribute. It is represented by dashed lines, right? And how is this calculated? This is calculated by present date minus this DOB. So this is a derived attribute. So that's all for the ER diagram, and that's all for the lecture today. Thank you.